The cargo hauler Dusty Margaret was not a pretty ship. She was old, dented, and held together by patches and prayers. Her paint had faded years ago, and her engine made sounds that worried anyone who listened too closely. But she flew. She always flew because her crew refused to let her stop. Captain Yua Chun had been flying the Margaret for 15 years. She knew every rattle and groan the old ship made. She also knew when something was truly wrong. And right now, something was truly wrong. The ship had limped into Helios Station with a dying power core. They needed repairs, parts, and at least 3 days of dock time. What they got instead was trouble. Helios Station sat at the crossroads of 6 major trade routes. It was busy, loud, and profitable. It was also controlled by the Vraxian pack. The Vraxians were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for 2 things: their love of combat and their hatred of weakness. They stood 7 feet tall on average, covered in dark scales that could stop a knife blade. Their society was built on strength. The strong ruled, the weak served. It was simple, brutal, and had worked for them for thousands of years. The pack's alpha was named Korath the Fangorn. He had earned his title by killing the previous alpha with his bare claws. He had kept it by killing anyone who challenged him. He ruled Helios Station like a personal kingdom, taking what he wanted from the ships that passed through. Most captains paid his fees without complaint. Fighting the pack meant death. Captain Chun was in the market section, trying to buy replacement parts when the Vraxians found her. 6 warriors surrounded her in seconds. They were huge, armed, and clearly looking for trouble. "Human captain," the leader growled. His translator box turned his snarls into flat, mechanical words. "You come with us. The Alpha wishes to speak." Chun knew better than to argue. She followed them through the station to the pack's territory, a section of docking bays and warehouses they had claimed as their own. The walls were decorated with trophies, weapons taken from defeated enemies, skulls of various species, and flags from conquered ships. Korath waited in the central hall. He sat on a throne made of metal and bone, surrounded by his warriors. There were at least 30 of them, each one bigger and meaner than the last. "Captain Chun," Korath said. His voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. "Your ship insults us." Chun kept her face calm. "I was not aware my ship had done anything to offend. It exists." Korath showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "It sits in our dock, leaking fluids, taking up space. It is ugly. It is weak, like all human things." The warriors laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "We will be gone as soon as repairs are complete," Chun said carefully. "We want no trouble with the pack." "Too late." Korath leaned forward. "Your presence is trouble. Your weakness is an insult. By the old laws, I claim the right of challenge. Your ship, your cargo, and your crew will belong to the pack, unless you can produce a champion to face our trials." Chun's heart sank. She had heard of the Vraxian trials. They were legendary across the sector. 3 challenges designed to test a warrior's body, mind, and spirit. No outsider had ever survived all 3. The pack used them to legally claim whatever they wanted. After all, if someone lost the trials fairly, who could complain? "I need time to choose a champion," Chun said. "You have until the next cycle. 20 standard hours." Korath waved a clawed hand. "Choose well, human. Choose your strongest. It will not matter, but at least you can die with some honor." The warriors escorted Chun back to her ship. She walked slowly, her mind racing. Her crew was small. 12 people, most of them technicians and cargo handlers. Their security officer, Reese, had a bad knee from an old injury. Their pilot, Old Sam, was 63 and had never won a fight in his life. The strongest person on the ship was probably Martinez, who worked in the cargo bay, but she had no combat training. They were going to lose. They were going to lose everything. Chun gathered her crew in the common room and explained the situation. The reaction was what she expected. Fear, anger, and finally, despair. Nobody wanted to volunteer for suicide. There has to be another way, First Officer Daniel said. He was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. We can call for help. Contact the sector authorities. The sector authorities are 3 days away, Chun replied. We have 20 hours. Then we run. We take off now. Forget the repairs. The core is at 12%. We would not make it to the jump point. Silence fell over the room. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it. They were trapped. I will do it. The voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look. Marcus Webb stood in the doorway, still wearing his work coveralls. There was grease on his hands and a smudge of something dark on his cheek. He was the ship's mechanic, the man who kept the Dusty Margaret flying through sheer stubbornness. He was 5 feet and 8 inches tall, a little soft around the middle, and had never been in a serious fight in his life. Marcus, no, Chun said immediately. You cannot be serious. I am serious. He walked into the room, calm as anything. Someone has to do it. Might as well be me. You are a mechanic, Daniel said. These are Vraxian combat trials. They will kill you in the first 5 minutes. Maybe, Marcus shrugged. Maybe not. Either way, sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves is not going to help anyone. The crew stared at him. This was not bravery. This was madness. Marcus, Chen said softly. Why? Why would you do this? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. Because this ship is my home. You people are my family. And I have spent 22 years keeping machines running when everyone said they were dead. He smiled, just a little. The Vraxians think they know what strong looks like. Maybe it is time someone showed them they are wrong. Chun wanted to argue. She wanted to order him to stand down. But she saw something in his eyes that stopped her. A quiet certainty. A stubborn fire that refused to go out. All right, she said. Finally. You have 20 hours. Use them well. Marcus nodded and walked out of the room, already thinking about what he needed to pack. Behind him, the crew watched him go, wondering if they had just witnessed courage or suicide. Perhaps, in the end, it was both. The hours passed quickly on the Dusty Margaret. Too quickly. The crew moved through the ship like ghosts, speaking in whispers, watching Marcus with sad eyes. They had already decided he was dead. They were just waiting for it to become official. Marcus ignored them. He had work to do. He started in the galley, going through the food storage with careful attention. He pulled out protein bars, sealed water packets, dried fruit, and a tin of cookies his sister had sent him 6 months ago. He had been saving them for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. First, Officer Daniels found him there, sorting snacks into a worn canvas bag. What are you doing? Daniels asked. Packing. Packing food? For a combat trial? Marcus looked up. When was the last time you did something difficult on an empty stomach? Daniels opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He had no answer for that. The Vraxians expect a warrior, Marcus continued, returning to his work. They expect someone who thinks like them. Big, strong, aggressive. Someone who will charge in, try to overpower them, and fail. He held up a protein bar. I am not that person. So I need to be something else. And what is that? Prepared. Daniel sat down heavily in a chair. He looked tired, old. Like a man watching a friend walk toward a cliff. Marcus, please. Talk to me. Make me understand. These trials, they are not just fighting. The Vraxians designed them to break people. Physically, mentally, spiritually. They're warriors trained from the day they are born. They are bred for this. You are, he struggled for words that were not insulting. A mechanic, Marcus finished for him. I know. Everyone keeps reminding me. Then why? Why do you think you have any chance at all? Marcus stopped packing. He turned to face Daniels fully, and for the first time, the first officer saw something different in his eyes. Not fear, not false confidence. Something deeper, harder, older. Let me tell you a story, Marcus said. 15 years ago, I was working on a freighter called the Kensington. Small ship, small crew. We were hauling medical supplies to a colony on the outer rim. 3 days from port, our reactor started to fail. He sat down across from Daniels. A reactor failure in deep space is a death sentence. You have maybe 6 hours before the core goes critical. There is no rescue coming. No help on the way. Just you and the machine that is trying to kill you. Daniels nodded slowly. He had heard stories like this. Every spacer had. The reactor was leaking coolant from a cracked line. The leak was inside the containment shell, which meant someone had to go in there to fix it. The temperature inside was over 200 degrees. The radiation levels were climbing every minute. The chief engineer said it was suicide. He said we should seal the compartment and hope we made it to port before the whole thing blew. Marcus was quiet for a moment, remembering. I went in anyway. I wrapped my hands in heat cloth and grabbed that coolant line. It burned through the cloth in 30 seconds. Then it started burning through my skin. But I held on. I held on for 4 minutes while the repair drone welded the crack shut. When I came out, my hands looked like raw meat. I could not move my fingers for a month. He held up his hands. Daniels could see the scars now, pale lines crossing his palms and fingers. But the reactor held. We made it to port. 26 people lived because I was too stupid to let go. The galley was very quiet. That is not the only story, Marcus continued. I could tell you about the station with failing life support, where I stayed awake for 4 days straight keeping the recyclers running. I could tell you about the pirate attack where I crawled through 3 kilometers of maintenance shaft, in the dark with a broken rib, to reach the backup generator. I could tell you about the engine fire on this very ship, where I sat in a burning room with a fire extinguisher and a prayer, because if I left, we all died. He leaned forward. The Vraxians trained their warriors to fight, to kill, to dominate. They are very good at it. But they have never met someone like me. They do not know what a human mechanic is. They do not understand what it means to keep things running when everything is falling apart. Daniel stared at him. You think you can outlast them? I think I can confuse them. I think I can survive them. And maybe, just maybe, I can beat them. Not by being stronger, by being different. A long moment passed. Then Daniels laughed. It was a strange sound, surprised, and almost hopeful. You are completely insane, he said. Probably. Marcus stood up and returned to his packing. But I have been called worse. Daniels watched him for a while longer, then left to tell the captain what he had learned. He was not sure if it made him feel better or worse. Probably both. Meanwhile, Marcus finished packing his bag. Food, water, a small toolkit, some basic medical supplies, and a few other items that might come in handy. He did not know exactly what the trials would involve, but he knew one thing. Problems were problems. Whether they were broken machines or Vraxian warriors, the approach was the same. Stay calm. Think clearly. Find the solution. He spent the rest of the night in the engine room, checking on the repairs they had started. The power core was stable for now, but it would not last forever. Another reason to win. If he lost, the crew would become pack property. But if he won, maybe they could get the parts they needed and get out of here. Dawn cycle came too quickly. Marcus packed his bag, checked his tools one last time, and walked to the airlock where the Vraxian escort was waiting. The whole crew came to see him off. Captain Chun stood at the front, her face carefully blank. Behind her, the others watched with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Come back to us," Chun said softly. Marcus smiled. It was a real smile, warm and calm. "I will do my best, Captain." Then he turned and walked into the corridor, following the Vraxian warriors toward whatever came next. Behind him, the crew stood in silence, watching until he disappeared around the corner. Then, slowly, they returned to their duties. There was nothing to do now but wait, and hope that their mechanic knew what he was doing. The combat arena was built to terrify. It rose from the center of the pack's territory like a metal mountain, all sharp edges and dark shadows. The walls were stained with old blood that nobody had bothered to clean. The air smelled like rust and fear. Thousands of Vraxians filled the viewing platforms, their scales gleaming under the harsh lights. They had come to watch an outsider die. It was good entertainment. Marcus walked into the arena with his canvas bag over his shoulder. He looked around at the crowd, the weapons, the obvious death traps. And then he sat down and pulled out a protein bar. The Vraxians did not know what to make of this. Alpha Korath watched from his private platform, his yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. This was not how challengers behaved. They were supposed to be scared or angry or grimly determined. This human looked like he was waiting for a shuttle. The arena master, a scarred old warrior named Threk, stepped forward to explain the rules. His translator box clicked and hummed as he spoke. 3 trials await you, human. The gauntlet, the hunt, and the breaking. Survive all 3 and your crew goes free. Fail at any point and you all become property of the pack. Marcus nodded, still chewing his protein bar. Your opponent is Veth the Unbroken. Threk gestured toward the far entrance. He has killed 16 challengers in this arena. He has never been defeated. The crowd roared as Veth entered. He was massive, even for a Vraxian. 8 feet of muscle, scale, and barely controlled violence. Scars covered his body like a map of past victories. His eyes were empty of everything except hunger. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked down at his protein bar. You want some? He called out. It has got peanuts. Veth snarled. The crowd fell silent, confused. The first trial is the gauntlet, Threk continued, pretending he had not heard. You will cross the arena from one side to the other. You will face fire, blades, crushing weights, and gravity shifts. The fastest time wins this phase. If you die, you lose. Simple enough, Marcus thought. He finished his protein bar and stood up. The signal sounded. Veth charged immediately, sprinting toward the obstacle course with predatory speed. He hit the first barrier at full power, smashing through it rather than climbing over. Flames shot up from the floor, and he ran through them without slowing, letting his scales absorb the heat. Spinning blades blocked his path, and he ducked under them with practiced ease. The crowd cheered. This was what they came to see. Pure Vraxian power. Marcus started walking. He did not run. He did not charge. He walked calmly to the first obstacle and looked at it carefully. It was a wall of metal bars, designed to be climbed quickly. But he noticed something else, a maintenance panel at the base, half hidden by rust and dirt. He knelt down and opened it. Inside was a mess of old wiring and mechanical parts. The arena was ancient, built generations ago. It had been repaired and modified many times, but never properly redesigned. Marcus could see the original systems underneath all the additions, like bones under skin. He pulled out a small tool from his pocket and got to work. Meanwhile, Veth was halfway through the gauntlet. He had taken several wounds, blood running from cuts on his arms and legs, but he did not slow down. Pain was nothing to a Vraxian warrior. He reached the gravity shift zone, where the floor suddenly became the ceiling, and adapted instantly, using his claws to grip the metal surface. Marcus was still at the first obstacle. But now the wall of bars was slowly sinking into the floor. He stepped over it casually and continued to the next challenge. The flame jets were next. They shot fire in random patterns, impossible to predict. Beth had simply run through them and accepted the burns. Marcus stopped and watched the pattern for exactly 30 seconds. Then he reached into a floor panel and pulled out a single wire. The flame stopped. He walked through the dead jets without hurrying. The spinning blades were more complicated. They were powered by a separate system, newer than the rest of the arena. Marcus spent almost 10 minutes examining them before he found what he was looking for, a small bolt that had come loose from the central motor. He wedged it back in at an angle, and the blades ground to a halt with a painful screech. By now, Veth had finished the gauntlet. He stood at the end, bleeding but victorious, waiting for his pathetic opponent to catch up. The crowd was still cheering for him, but their enthusiasm was fading. Something strange was happening, and they could all feel it. Marcus continued through the arena at his own pace. Every obstacle he reached, he stopped to examine. Every trap he encountered, he disabled. The gravity zone gave him some trouble, but he found a control panel hidden in the wall and convinced it that gravity should point in a more sensible direction. 20 minutes after Veth finished, Marcus walked across the final line. He was not tired. He was not injured. He had not broken a sweat, and behind him, half the arena's death traps no longer worked. The winner of the first trial is Veth the Unbroken, Threk announced. But his voice was uncertain. The crowd murmured, confused. Chorus stared down at the human with growing unease. Speed had won the trial. Yes, that was the rule. But the human had done something that no challenger had ever done before. He had not beaten the gauntlet. He had broken it. What did that mean? What was this creature? Marcus found a quiet corner of the arena and sat down. He pulled out a water packet and took a long drink. Then he looked up at the Alpha's platform and raised the packet in a small salute. Korath did not return the gesture. But for the first time in many years, he felt something he did not recognize. Later, he would realize it was doubt. The second trial begins in 1 hour, Threk announced. The hunt. Marcus nodded and pulled out another protein bar. He had a feeling he would need the energy around him. The arena fell into confused silence. The Vraxians had come to watch a slaughter. Instead, they were watching something they did not understand. A human who did not fight like a warrior. A human who fought like something else entirely. They just did not know what that something was yet. The tunnels beneath Helios Station were old. Very old. They had been carved out centuries ago, when the station was just a mining outpost. Before the trade routes made it valuable. Before the Vraxians came and claimed it as their own. Now the tunnels served a different purpose. They were the hunting grounds. Threk explained the rules of the second trial, while Vraxian workers sealed the arena exits. His voice echoed off the metal walls, flat and final. The hunt tests survival. Veth will enter the tunnels first. You will follow 1 hour later. You must survive until dawn cycle. If Veth catches you, you lose. If you die from any cause, you lose. If you try to escape the tunnels, you lose. Marcus nodded. He was checking his bag, making sure everything was in order. The tunnels are dark, Threk continued. There are no lights. There are creatures that live in the deeper sections, things that hunt by sound and smell. There are unstable areas where the floor may collapse. There are places where the air is bad. He paused. Veth knows these tunnels well. Veth knows these tunnels well. He has hunted many prey in them. None have survived, How long until dawn cycle? Marcus asked. 18 standard hours. 18 hours. In complete darkness. Being hunted by a perfect predator who knew the territory. With unknown creatures, bad air, and unstable ground, Marcus thought about it for a moment. Then he shrugged. Could be worse. Threx stared at him. The old warrior had seen many challenges face the hunt. He had seen them cry, beg, rage, and pray. He had never seen one shrug. Veth entered the tunnels first, disappearing into the darkness with a predator's silence. Marcus watched him go, memorizing the direction. The waiting hour passed slowly. Marcus used it to eat, drink, and rest. He also asked questions. The Vraxian guards did not want to answer, but he kept asking in such a friendly, casual way that they eventually gave in. Where did the tunnels lead? What kind of creatures lived down there? How often did the pack use them for training? The guards thought he was trying to gather useful intelligence. They were partly right, but mostly Marcus just liked to know how things worked. When the hour ended, Marcus walked into the darkness. The tunnel swallowed him immediately. The light from the entrance faded behind him, and within a minute, he could not see his own hands. The darkness was complete, absolute, like being buried alive. Most prey panicked at this point. They ran blindly, making noise, leaving trails of scent and sound for the hunter to follow. They thought speed would save them. Marcus stopped and listened. The tunnels were not silent. He could hear distant drips of water, the hum of old machinery, the skitter of small things in the walls. He could feel air moving, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, telling him about passages and openings he could not see. He pulled out a small device from his bag. It was not a light, not exactly. It was something he had built years ago for maintenance work in damaged ships. A gadget that used echolocation to create a rough map of his surroundings. The display was dim and orange, barely visible, but it showed him the walls and floor well enough to move. He started walking, not running. Walking. Meanwhile, Veth was already hunting. His species had evolved in darkness, and his eyes could see heat signatures and movement even in total black. His sense of smell could track a drop of blood through a kilometer of tunnel. His hearing could detect a heartbeat from 50 meters away. He was the perfect predator. And he was hungry. The first few hours passed without contact. Veth found the human's trail easily enough, following the scent of food and metal tools. But the trail was strange. It did not go in a straight line. It wandered, stopped, doubled back, and sometimes disappeared entirely. The human was doing something in the tunnels. But what? Veth increased his pace, eager for the kill. He found the first note 2 hours later. It was pinned to a wall near a supply cache the pack kept for their warriors. The note was written in basic galactic script, simple enough for a translator to read. Found your supplies. Nice setup. Hope you do not mind if I borrowed some things. Left some snacks in return. The protein bars are pretty good. Veth snarled and checked the cache. The human had taken water, ration packs, and a length of rope. He had left behind sealed packets of human food, arranged neatly on a shelf. This was impossible. Prey did not raid supply caches. Prey did not leave notes. Prey did not act like this. Veth followed the trail more carefully now. He was not just hunting anymore. He was investigating. 3 hours later, he found the human. Marcus was sitting in a small alcove, a dim orange light illuminating his workspace. He had dismantled several pieces of equipment, parts scattered around him like puzzle pieces. He was humming to himself as he worked. Veth approached silently, every instinct screaming for the kill. But something made him hesitate. The human was so calm, so completely unafraid. It was wrong. It was confusing. "Oh, hey," Marcus said without looking up. "Hungry? I brought extra." He held out a sealed package. Raxian combat rations, taken from the supply cache. Veth froze. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how anyone behaved. How did you know I was there? Veth asked, his translator making his growls into words. Heard your breathing change when you saw me. You have been following for about 10 minutes, right? You are very quiet. I am impressed. Veth did not know what to say. In all his years of hunting, he had never had a conversation with his prey. What are you doing? He finally asked, making something. Marcus finished connecting 2 parts and held up his creation. It was a small device that hummed with power. Watch. He pressed a switch. The tunnels flooded with light. Veth screamed. His dark adapted eyes burned with sudden pain, overwhelmed by the brightness. He stumbled backward, claws scraping against the walls. Unable to see anything except blinding white dot by the time his vision cleared, several minutes later, the human was gone. Veth stood in the empty alcove, breathing hard. His eyes still hurt. His pride hurt worse. For the next 6 hours, the tunnels became the human's workshop. Every trap Veth set was disarmed. Every ambush was predicted. Every shortcut was blocked by sudden cave-ins that seemed almost intentional. And everywhere the Vraxian went, he found more notes. Careful, unstable ground ahead. I marked a safe path for you. There is a creature nest about 50 meters to your left. You might want to go around. You are a good hunter, just not used to prey that pays attention. Dawn cycle came. The tunnel exits opened. Marcus walked out into the arena, tired but unharmed. Veth followed a few minutes later. He was not injured. He was well fed, thanks to the snacks the human kept leaving for him. But he was deeply, profoundly confused. He had not caught his prey. But his prey had not run from him either. It was like hunting a ghost. A ghost that left protein bars. In the viewing platform, Alpha Korath watched his champion emerge from the tunnels, looking lost and uncertain. This was not how the hunt was supposed to end. Draw, Threk announced reluctantly. Neither participant was caught or killed. The trial ends in a draw. The crowd murmured unhappily. They had wanted blood. They had gotten confusion. Instead, Marcus found a bench and sat down heavily. 18 hours without sleep was catching up with him. But he allowed himself a small smile. One trial to go. The breaking. He had heard stories about this one. It was the worst of the 3. It was designed to destroy the mind and spirit, to reduce the strongest warriors to begging wrecks. He ate another protein bar and tried not to think about it too much. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way he faced everything else, one problem at a time. The chamber for the final trial was different from the arena. It was smaller, older, and felt wrong in a way that was hard to describe. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, and strange machines lined the edges of the room. They looked like medical equipment designed by someone who had never cared about the patient. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber. He had been stripped of his bag, his tools, everything except the clothes on his back. Around him, the pack shamans prepared their devices with ceremonial precision. Alpha Korath watched from an elevated platform, flanked by his advisors. The entire pack leadership had come to witness this. The breaking was sacred to them. It was the final test of a warrior's spirit, the moment when pretenders were separated from true fighters. The breaking is not about combat, Threk explained. His voice was quieter now, almost respectful. It is about endurance, about will. The crucible will attack your body and mind. It will show you your worst fears. It will give you pain beyond anything you have experienced. You must endure until the shamans declare the trial complete, or until you speak the words of surrender. Marcus nodded. And how long does it usually take? Most warriors break within 3 hours. The strongest of our kind have lasted 8. The record is 12 hours, set by Alpha Korath himself in his youth. Korath smiled at the memory. It had been the making of him, that trial. He had emerged from the crucible reborn, all weakness burned away. "We shall see what a human mechanic is made of," he said. The shamans finished their preparations. Strange lights began to glow from the machines. The air itself seemed to change, becoming thick and heavy. "Begin," Korath commanded. The pain hit Marcus like a wave. It was everywhere at once, in every nerve, in every cell. It felt like being burned and frozen at the same time. He gasped, stumbled, but did not fall. The shamans increased the intensity. Now the visions came. The machines reached into his mind and pulled out memories, twisted them, made them into weapons. He saw his mother's funeral. He saw the crew of the Kensington burning. He saw the Dusty Margaret exploding, his friends dying, their faces melting into screams. He knew they were not real, that they felt real. That was the point. The crowd watched in eager silence. This was the entertainment they had been waiting for. The slow destruction of an enemy, the moment when his will would crack and crumble. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about pain. He had known a lot of pain in his life. The reactor burn on the Kensington had been the worst, but there had been others. Broken bones from falls in maintenance shafts. Chemical burns from leaking pipes. The crushing pressure of vacuum when a seal failed and he had 90 seconds to fix it before his blood started to boil. Pain was just information. It was the body screaming that something was wrong. But sometimes you could not fix what was wrong. Sometimes you just had to endure until you could. He started to hum. It was an old song, a working song, passed down through generations of mechanics and engineers. Nobody remembered who had written it or when. It did not have words anymore, just a melody that everyone knew. You hummed it when the job was hard and the hours were long. You hummed it because stopping meant failure, and failure meant death. The shamans looked at each other in confusion. The subject was not screaming. He was not begging. He was humming. They increased the intensity again. Marcus felt his body shake. Blood started to drip from his nose. His vision blurred. The pain was incredible, beyond anything he had ever experienced. But he had been 19 years old once, alone on a dying ship, holding a burning reactor line with his bare hands. He had felt his skin melt and his nerves die, and he had not let go. Because letting go meant everyone died. This was just pain. He had met pain before. They were old friends. Hour 1 passed. Hour 2. Hour 3. The crowd grew quiet. The cheering had stopped. Something was happening that nobody understood. The human mechanic sat in the center of the crucible, bleeding from his nose and ears, shaking like a leaf in a storm. But he was still conscious. Still humming. Hour 4. Hour 5. Hour 6. Korath leaned forward, his yellow eyes wide. This was impossible. The crucible was at maximum intensity, levels that had broken the strongest Raxian warriors in minutes. The human should be a screaming wreck by now. "Push harder," he ordered. The shamans hesitated. "Alpha, if we go higher, we risk killing him. Then let him die. I want to see him break first." The machine screamed to life with new power. Marcus felt something inside him tear. The world became white noise and agony. He thought about the Dusty Margaret. His home, his family. They were counting on him. If he failed, they would spend the rest of their lives as slaves. He thought about Captain Chun, who had taken a chance on a young mechanic 20 years ago. He thought about old Sam the pilot, who told terrible jokes and made the best coffee in the sector. He thought about Martinez in the cargo bay, who was going to have a baby next year. He could not let them down. The humming grew louder. Hour 7. Hour 8. Hour 9. Korath was standing now, his claws digging into the railing of his platform. This was not possible. This was not happening. What is he? One of his advisors whispered. Korath did not answer. He was watching the human with something that might have been fear. Hour 10. Hour 11. Hour 12. The shamans were exhausted. The machines were overheating. The crucible had never run this long before, and still the human sat there, bleeding, shaking, humming. At hour 18, Korath called for the trial to end. The machines powered down. The pain stopped. Marcus opened his eyes. For a long moment, he just sat there, breathing. Then, slowly, painfully, he reached into his pocket. He had hidden one thing from the guards. A single item they had missed. He pulled out a small cookie, slightly crushed, wrapped in plastic. That it? His voice was rough, broken. But he was smiling. Because I still have snacks left if anyone wants some. The arena was completely silent. No one had ever survived the breaking. No one had ever endured more than 12 hours. This human, this small, soft, ordinary creature, had lasted 18. And he was offering them cookies. Korath walked down from his platform. His warriors parted before him, their faces blank with shock. He stopped in front of Marcus and stared down at him for a long, long moment. What are you? He asked quietly. Marcus looked up at the Alpha. Blood was still dripping down his face. His body was ruined. He could barely move, but his eyes were clear and calm. I am a mechanic, he said. I fix things that are broken. I keep things running when they should have died a long time ago. And I never ever give up. Because giving up means people I care about get hurt. He held up the cookie. So, want a snack? Korath stared at him. Then, slowly, incredibly, he started to laugh. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just seen something truly extraordinary. Your crew is free, he said. Your ship is free. And you, he shook his head in amazement. You may take whatever parts you need from our stores. No charge. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you. Do not thank me. You earned this. Korath leaned closer. Tell me one thing, human. Those working songs you were humming. What are they for? They remind us why we keep going. When everything hurts and you want to stop, you hum the song. Because others have hummed it before you in the same pain, facing the same fear. And they did not stop. So you cannot stop either. Korath was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. We must learn this song, he said. Will you teach us? Marcus smiled. Despite the pain, despite everything, he smiled. Sure, it goes like this. And in the ancient chamber, surrounded by the warriors of the Vratsian pack, a human mechanic began to hum. 1 week later, the dusty Margaret left Helios, stationed with a fully repaired power core and a cargo hold full of gifts from the pack. The crew stood at the windows, watching the station shrink behind them. Captain Chun found Marcus in the engine room, back at work like nothing had happened. His hands were bandaged, his face was still bruised, but his eyes were peaceful. How do you feel? She asked. Tired, he admitted. But the manifold is not going to fix itself. She watched him work for a while. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her for days. Were you scared? In that chamber, when they were breaking you, were you scared? Marcus thought about it for a moment. Of course I was scared. Fear is natural. It tells you something dangerous is happening. He connected 2 wires and tested the circuit. But fear is like pain. It is just information. It does not have to control you. He turned to face her. Captain, I have spent my whole life fixing things that other people said could not be fixed. That is what humans do. We look at impossible problems and we find solutions. Not because we are the strongest or the fastest, but because we do not know how to quit. He smiled, tired but content. The Vraxians brought their fiercest warriors. They expected another warrior. They got something else instead. They got a mechanic with a bag full of snacks and 22 years of practice at not dying. He turned back to the engine. And that, Captain, is why we won. Chun watched him work for a moment longer. Then she nodded and returned to the bridge. Behind her, Marcus Webb hummed a working song and fixed another small problem. Just another day on the Dusty Margaret. Just another human, doing impossible things.